Among the biggest critics of the term energy independence is Robert Bryce. The noted author and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute wrote a book a few years ago called Gusher of Lies, The Dangerous Delusions of Energy Independence. And his most recent book, Power Hungry, continues along those lines. Robert joins me from Austin. Welcome to the program, Robert.
Hi, thanks for having me, Bill.
You said in Gusher of Lies that energy independence is neither desirable nor doable. Is that still the case?
Yes, it clearly is. It was true back in '08 when I wrote that book. It's true now. Look, this is the most hackneyed phrase in American politics, and it's been the most hackneyed phrase in American politics since the days of Richard Nixon. Why would the U.S. want to be independent of the world's single biggest and most transparent market? This is the most important market in the modern economy, and so this idea that the U.S. should somehow be independent of it just rings hollow to me. The reality is that the U.S. supplies about 80% of its own energy. We produce 80% of the energy we consume, and we're going to trade with the rest of the world. We always have for more than a century.
Well, it seems the notion of energy independence once was the U.S. needs to do more to supply itself with energy. But what you're saying is that there's an opportunity increasingly for the U.S. to engage more in foreign energy markets now, right?
Sure, and in fact, what the big turnaround now, of course, is the shale revolution. So that just 4 years ago, the U.S. was talking about major natural gas imports. Now we're looking at the possibility for significant natural gas exports through LNG, both from the United States and from Canada, with the Kitimat project in British Columbia. We're also exporting large amounts of coal. Our coal exports increased by 30% from 2010 through 2011. And I just checked the numbers this morning. In the most recent week, we've exported about 2.9 million barrels of oil per day to foreign markets. So the U.S. is an energy powerhouse. We need to engage in the world market and take advantage of the export opportunities for obvious reasons. Balance of trade, jobs in the U.S., et cetera.
You know, in Power Hungry, you wrote that you had the end-to-end theory, natural gas to nuclear. Now, the natural gas piece seems to be working fine in the U.S. right now, but not the nuclear piece.
Well, that's true. Nuclear in the United States needs natural gas at about $8. That's Exelon's figure. It needs about $8 for it to be economically competitive. I haven't checked the price this morning, but the last I checked, it was about spot price is about $2.60. We're a long way from $8. But that doesn't mean that the U.S. can't continue developing nuclear technology. And I think one of the things that's happening now, yes, we're building a couple of nuclear reactors in the southeast. Those are anomalous because of the public utility commissions in those states. But look at Babcock and Wilcox. Old line industrial company developing modular reactors for use here in the United States or around the world. NuScale, another U.S. company developing modular reactors. Nuclear is not going away. Yes, it's been slowed down here in the United States, but globally the nuclear renaissance is underway and will continue.
Robert, you've debated Amory Lovins for years regarding his long-held views that the U.S. can rely largely on renewable energy in coming years. And that there's a good business case for doing so, he says. Do you still think he's dead wrong?
I do. And in particular, one of my biggest problems with what Lovins says is his blithe kind of acceptance or belief in the viability of biofuels. Look, the biofuel boondoggle has been ongoing now for decades. The most obvious example, of course, is the corn ethanol scam, which continues now after decades. We've been able to remove the subsidies, but just in the last few days, excuse me, the EPA approved the use of 15% ethanol blended into U.S. gasoline supplies, despite the objections of the car makers, boat makers, etc. But Lovins, even in his latest book, Reinventing Fire, continues to push this myth that somehow biofuels made from non-food products like biomass, switchgrass, etc., are somehow going to step up and provide huge amounts of energy to the U.S. market. It's simply not going to happen, and he's been saying this same thing since the 1970s. He's been wrong, but he's been consistent.
Robert, I mean, this is a pretty good picture, by and large, on U.S. energy supply and demand these days, better than we might have anticipated a couple of years ago. But what else is needed for the U.S. For energy security right now?
Well, my focus, I think we have a lot of energy security, and that's another phrase that gets used a lot. No one knows exactly what it means, but the U.S. produces, I just did the numbers, in fact, just this morning, we produce 80% of the energy we consume. We're the world's single biggest natural gas producer. We're the second largest coal producer. We're the third largest oil producer. We have tremendous advantages over the rest of the world. So there's a lot of hand-wringing, always has been, about U.S. and U.S. energy policy. I think the policy should be very simple. Make energy cheap, abundant, and reliable, in that order. And instead, we've been bombarded with a lot of other messages about, well, it has to be carbon-free, or it has to be green, or it has to be clean. Well, I'm for cheap, first and foremost, for cheap, and that's the key, particularly now with the economy on its heels and so many people unemployed.
Robert Bryce is a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Thank you very much.
Thanks a million, Bill.
Coming up next, is there a new way to fuel our way forward? Stay with us.